Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's event. I am super excited that you are here tonight. Thank you all so much for joining us for Left Bank Books, the St. Louis Poetry Center, and Four-Way Books present a Four-Way Books Poetry Showcase featuring poets Reginald Gibbons, Rodney, Terich, Leonard, Angela, Narciso, Torres, and Abigail Wender. Left Bank Books is St. Louis's oldest independent bookstore, celebrating almost 52 years. Our birthday is in July. We would like to thank all of our supporters, the supporters of the St. Louis Poetry Center, the supporters of all of our fantastic readers tonight, and everyone for their outpouring of love for our bookstore. We have adapted and are still bringing you the things that you love the most about Left Bank Books with curbside pickup and delivery to anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world even. We are very happy to be able to bring our event series virtual. We believe that events are a way to expand your mind and bring in new thoughts to make the world a better place. We hope that you enjoy this event, and we hope that you support Left Bank Books by purchasing a copy for you or for all of your friends at left-bank.com. Purchasing a copy of any of the books from tonight's event allows us to keep our bookstore and staff operating. It gets you a fantastic new book, and it is a fantastic way to show your support. So thank you for your support. We need your support. I am Shane Mullen. I'm the events coordinator for Left Bank Books. I help produce our hundreds of author events each year with a fantastic team here in St. Louis. We will be taking questions from the audience at the end of the event, so please type your questions as a comment, and you can actually type those as a comment at any point in time throughout the event. And I will keep track of them, and we will get back to them at the end. And be sure to follow Left Bank Books and the St. Louis Poetry Center on Facebook to be notified about all of the fantastic virtual events that we have lined up. We have so many incredible events lining up for the year. I am adding events daily that are incredibly exciting. So be sure to sign up for those. And now I'm going to bring in the director for the St. Louis Poetry Center, Aaron Quick. Hello, Aaron.
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much, Shane. Thanks also to Left Bank Books and to Four-Way Books for inviting St. Louis Poetry Center to be a part of this phenomenal showcase of poetry. We're really excited. I think it's fair to say that Four-Way Books holds a special place in our hearts here in St. Louis, and we're just thrilled to be a part of this event, so thank you. We have 4 excellent poets that we're going to be hearing from tonight, so we're just going to go ahead and jump right in. We're going to get started tonight with Reginald Gibbons. Reginald Gibbons is a novelist, translator, and poet, the author of nearly a dozen poetry collections, including Renditions, which is just out from Four-Way Books. His book, Creatures of a Day, was a finalist for the National Book Award, and his book, Saints, won publication in the National Poetry Series. Volumes of his selected poems in translation have been published in Spain, Italy, and France. Gibbons is also the author of a book on poetic technique, How Poems Think, which is just a fabulous title, and I'm a sucker for a good title, so I can't wait to read that one. His translations include 3 forthcoming volumes of selected poems by Boris Pasternak, Marina Sviteva, and Ilya Kutik, all co-translated with Ilya Kutik. He has won fellowships from the Guggenheim Foundation, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Center for Hellenic Studies and other honors and awards. In 1989, Gibbons was one of a group of co-founders of the Guild Literary Complex in Chicago and serves as an emeritus board member. He was the editor of Tri-Quarterly magazine from 1981 to 1997 and co-founded Tri-Quarterly Books. He currently teaches at Northwestern University, where he is a Francis Hooper Professor of Arts and Humanities. We are so excited to hear from him. Please join us in welcoming Reginald Gibbons.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. I want to thank the Poetry Center and the bookstore and Four-Way Books because you're all very generous hosts for us poets. And this is really a lot of fun to do with you. Here's a little poem I've adapted from ancient Greek from the 1st century. Those poems didn't have titles, those little short poems. This one I call Elderly Greek Scribe. I can identify. Elderly Greek scribe at a temple of the muses. Do you see him? He's offering his little heavy discus of lead for marking the margins and the columns, and his knife for trimming and notching his reed pens, and his straightest ruler, and his dry ink-stained pumice stone from the beach for absorbing excess ink and for gently rubbing away a wrong mark. He places the four things there together. It's not silver, not gold, but it's his grateful donation today in honor of the muses. Only everyday things, worth nothing. Yes, of course, but old age has clouded his eyes. He can't work anymore. And these are the only valuables he's ever owned. This is a translation of a poem by Assaf Mandelstam, the Russian poet. He wrote it in 1913. Russians don't use titles for short poems either. They just use the first line. I call this What Remains. Yes, bread that's poisoned, and not even one sip of air. How hard it is for the wound of life to be cured. Joseph himself, sold to Egypt as a slave, could not have been more heavily grieved. Then under the sky swarm of stars, Bedouins come. They quiet their horses. Then in turn, with eyes closed, each invents some chanted fragment of their day, of epic nothing that only brought them boredom. Among such writers, little is needed to inspire. In the dunes, one man lost a quiver of arrows. Others traded some geldings for a mare. Events are only a mist that thins and disappears. But if such songs are sung out to the end, with all the heart, with all the breath in the lungs, almost everything vanishes. And what remains is the desert vastness, the stars, the one who sings. Here's another little poem by Mandelstam. I call it Mandelstam's Bees. For your sweet joy, take from my cupped hands a little glittering of sun, a little honey. For this is what Persephone's own bees commanded. A boat can't cast off if it isn't moored. No one can hear a shadow that wears fur boots. We can't best our fear in this dark wood. Our kisses, these are all that we can save, velvety as bees, which die if they are exiled from the hive. They're murmuring in the translucent groves of night. The far wilds of mountain Greece are their native land. Their diet is thyme, T-I-M-E, lungwort, pale meadowsweet. For joy, please, take this pagan gift, this rude, rustling necklace of bees that have died. For these had transmuted honey into sun. Mandelstam loved impossibilities. This is after a poem by Yehuda Amichai, an Israeli poet. Afterward. Afterward. Across fields of native weeds holding their breath and cows breathing, we escaped as far as a stand of slow fleeing trees. Screaming more and more, the devoted, hardworking ambulances nearby began rushing away toward ERs and then to gasoline bars. We lay down on our frightened raincoats. Our shadows among the oaks remained on tiptoe, on watch in all directions. We lay there till in moonlit midnight came more assault rifle shooting elsewhere. The wind winged away gasping and hid in ditches with the surviving children. The ditches dug themselves deeper into clayey dread, and dark ravines crowded up into our helpless thoughts, and memories of earlier times of such chaos rushed through you. And then deep into interior rifts of the earth, your innerness too fled. I followed, looking back. Everyone's lungs were bleeding like smoke alarms, but softly. And we keep hearing a command to forget. But to forget would mean not helping everyone survive. One leaf, two leaves. This is from a poem by the Spanish poet Luis Cernuda, 20th century poem, a poet. The faintest sound, the fingertip of a leaf touching the window pane, or a tiny spring trickling over pebbles, or droplets of light rain on the forehead of my childhood. The lightest caress, bare feet in summer on a soft dirt path, a hand that attempts for the first time desire's touch, or the clean darkness lying light as a bedsheet over one's sleepless self. A nameless fervor within me so often doesn't seem to be mine, yet is me. Nearly everything near or far that reaches toward me soothes me and wounds me. You, your presence, even though it's not my life, is my life. The way two unnoticed leaves can be proof of the world's breath. This is made up of lines and riffs off of lines of poems by Boris Pasternak. Anemone. The anemone stares with its wide open petals at all the new morning flowers around it. Awake through half the night as you sleep, I'd happily go sleepless for a century if I could do it here, listening to the air slowly swaying inside the room and beyond the window too, like calm sea waves among these boats we call our houses. Both the air and I are trying not to wake you, and so's the hermit thrush that's singing now as softly as it can. Even one anemone is a cosmos. Maybe the stars were made only for laughing with their inconceivably bright breath. Add everything up, orchard, fence, pond, wild wooded mountains, and in the empty kitchen a glass of clean water, and the whole pitch black universe lit by frothing nebula white screams. All of it at once, all of it, is what one child, soft stemmed as a thin weed, still unable to comprehend her own suffering, has in her own small heart and does not know how to let pour out. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Reginald. For our second poet tonight reading, we have Rodney Terich Leonard. Rodney Terich Leonard was born in Nicksburg, Alabama, an Air Force veteran who served during the Gulf War. His society profiles and poems have appeared in Southern Humanities Review, Red River Review, The Huffington Post, Bomb Magazine, The Cortland Review, Four-Way Review, New York Times, and many others. Sweetgum and Lightning is his debut collection of poetry. He holds degrees from the New School, NYU, Tisch School of the Arts, and Teachers College, Columbia University. A Callaloo Poetry Fellow, he received an MFA in Poetry from Columbia University, and he currently lives in Manhattan. Please welcome Rodney Terich Leonard.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much to Left Bank Books and the St. Louis Poetry Center for this kind invitation, and Clarissa and Fourway and all the great work and tall work that you're doing for these books and these poets. I thank you. We thank you. To my co-readers and to all the guests, welcome. And it's a pleasure to be here. I'll start this evening by reading two poems, which are kind of in the portraitist personality in terms of the book. Norfinia's Lament. 1. Oh, to plate potatoes and pot roast for a trunk-armed man of pine, pecks and dangle seek dawn and terrain. The planet they find is pecan underneath orange and aqua cotton. Winter nightgown draws the heat. 2. Quick turn. Norfinia in a mud hole spinning. Wheeze and black decaf. 3-year air and slack in the seat of culottes. What can the matter be now? It can't be too serious. We can't talk it over. Now is now scented swoon. 3. 1969. September sealed envelope, postmarked El Paso, Fort Bliss. Really? A letter and a little piece of change should nurse a vow? Hush a woman's worry? Wyless husband meant rented rooms, in-laws sofa, Buick burdened with bedspreads, bomber jackets, kimonos, teapots and pictures, wife wait, stoops roost. 4. Rundown mama, 3rd shift, 10 to 6 at the Russell Mills, glistened and glistening press and curl, whiffs of frangipani, pork rinds and schlitz. Many a day, chime and reachable chapel. 6 sisters are not scars nor welts. For wishes she won't possess, Otis Redding cups vinegar into Friday, the day Sunday through Thursday makes. 5. Separation separates. Legs weren't always crossed. You know, I really have to thank Gwendolyn Brooks for introducing me to the nuances of how a portrait of a person, you know, can really capture the nuance, you know, the importance, a sliver of importance about a person. So I'm really studying this form, and I suppose it grows out of my interest, early childhood interest in photographs. I was so amazed that a machine, not knowing the mechanics at the time, but a machine could capture, you know, something in the now. Pie and Pat Marbury's daughter. Califeridae, blowflies, buzz the smokehouse for bacon, breast, and neck. For dead oink and cluck. Lightning belongs to Jesus round here. Pie's zucchini is squash. Pap's venison is deer. Pregnant Barbara sheens gullible, flanking patience and bloom. coquettish as a hatched hen egg. The swirl of sea salt under her tongue, power saw oil, lard, onion fried pink salmon. The smell of morning chicken shit yanks her vomit. Not soothed by chancel nor bagpipes. If it ain't rural, it ain't right. Hand to hold on simple Sundays. She is Pie and Pat Marbury's daughter. 11. An outhouse year. Someone I love rips rags for tampons. Someone I love speaks less and less. Is the sky ever too pink to suggest you're poor? I am 11. Having studied them, I introduced myself to Colonel Douglas R. and Jessica K. Smith, husband and wife of Rockford's Golden Rule Market, the Smiths of Esprit and Chanel, Cashmere and City Speech, of Beethoven's italicized wonderment, I know because I asked, of black chauffeured blue Cadillac and 2 Doberman pinschers guarding their brick federal colonial. I am hired to neaten and clean, to stock and cashier. Sometimes I pump gas. On calendar-circled Saturdays, I utter Eames, Rattan, Picasso, bone china, commissary, sparkle, miso, lacquer, Andrew Wyeth, linseed oil, poached, Shakespeare, Melba toast, duvet, Summer's Eve, Harper Lee, salmon, invoice, unleaded, visa. Slowly, I inch my family away from government milk and cheese. Two shorties, if my time is okay. I guess it is. This poem is titled, I'm a dreamer, like I dream a lot. I can get lost in a dream. You know, I feel like the night's wasted if I don't dream. It's such a departure from the ordinary for me to dream. I'm a napper too. A 5-minute nap is like a flight to Paris. It works for me. So this is from a dream sequence. The late Mrs. Clarence Jackson Sr. speaks to her grandson in a dream on a ferry from Dover to Calais. And I really wanted to capture this voice. I tried. I tried. The mannish way my son phoned you, quiet legs crossed, funk in his drawers, 6 o'clock news on, pulls up my onions. Each time I spit and cuss, each pour of Clorox, each Meals on Wheels, each quip of my name, Willow May, is hallowed gossip. Weeks I smelled glory, ham hocks and souse, honey buns and fatback, chitlins and hush puppies, Pepsi and fried chops, loves. I lost my legs too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rodney. That was a fantastic reading. So much food in there. That was wonderful. That's, I think, a theme that comes up in another one of our poets that'll be reading tonight as well. Our next poet, our third poet that we'll be reading tonight is Angela Narciso Torres. Angelo Narciso Torres is the author of Blood Orange, which won the Willow Books Literature Award for Poetry in 2013, the chapbook To the Bone from Sundress Publications, and What Happens Is Neither, just out from Four Way Books. Her recent work appears in Poetry, Missouri Review, and Quarterly West. A graduate of Warren Wilson MFA Program for Writers and Harvard Graduate School of Education, Angela has received fellowships from Breadloaf Writers Conference, Illinois Arts Council, and Ragdale Foundation. She won the 2019 Yates Poetry Prize from the W.B. Yeats Society of New York and was named one of New City Lit's Lit 50 Who Really Books in Chicago in 2016. Born in Brooklyn and raised in Manila, she serves as a senior and reviews editor for Rhino Poetry. She lives in Southern California. Please welcome Angela Narciso Torres. Uh-oh, I think you're on mute.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you so much. And thanks to the St. Louis Poetry Center for hosting us. Thanks to Shane of Left Bank Books for being such a gracious host today. Such an honor and a pleasure to be here. Thanks too to my co-readers, Reginald, Rodney, and Abby. It's such an honor really to be reading with you, all of you from Four Way Books. And to Clarissa Long, our publicist, who's been so wonderful. I'll be reading from my new book, What Happens Is Neither. Actually, I just told Erin that the pronunciation is neither, and then I said neither. So it's What Happens Is Neither. This book means a lot to me because I wrote it in the same year. I completed it in the same year that I lost both my parents. So the spine of this book is that loss, but it also has a lot of poems about self-reinvention, of discovering the self after grief, rebuilding a life, and rediscovering delight, really. The first poem is made from Filipino folk sayings that my mother passed along to us from her elders. As a child growing up in the Philippines, these sayings both terrified and fascinated me because they pointed to that other unseen world beneath this one that operated from another set of laws or logic. If you go to bed hungry. If you go to bed hungry, your soul will get up and steal cold rice from the pot. Stop playing with fire before the moon rises, or you'll pee in your sleep. Sweeping the floor after dark sweeps wealth and good fortune out the door. Fork dropped, a gentleman will visit. Spoon, a bashful lady. Bathing after you've cooked over a hot stove makes the veins swell. For safe passage to the guest who leaves mid-meal, turn your plate. The adage goes, coffee stunts growth. 12 grapes on New Year's, the opposite. Advice from the learned, book under your pillow. Never step on, never drop. Every rice grain that remains on your plate, you'll meet again on the footpath to heaven. You'll have to stoop to pick up each one. So my mother struggled with that horrible disease, Alzheimer's, and I wrote this next poem in part as a way to record everything I could in my yearly visits to Manila before her memory was completely erased and before her language disappeared. That line from Rodney's reading really resonated. Someone I love speaks less and less. This poem is called Sundowning. For my mother, Carmen. The sweetest meat clings to the bone, my mother says, knifing her steak. Carmen, silver spade on my tongue. Mahjong nights, her mother and father gone, she cried herself to sleep. Blamed in the morning for her mother's losing hand. Unlucky tears. The sweetest meat, she begins at dinner, tearing off a drumstick. What will she recall by morning? Named for Our Lady of Mount Carmel, she pinned brown scapulars under our shirts, wet stamps that cleaved to our backs. Carmen, prayer on the breath. Amid potted ferns, she works a jigsaw puzzle, Bizet on the radio. Unable to sleep, she made me lie next to her. My brothers clambered the banyan trees. My legs twitched, a broken clock. Her kisses are guava and rust. She sings kundimans her mother sang, Sampaguita, dahil sayo, saan ka man. Sunday morning, puzzle pieces strewn on yesterday's news. Maria Callas on the phonograph. Carmen, citrine fire. When she plays the piano, the lovebirds fall silent. Alabaster eggs tremble in glass bowls. Afternoons, she woke with an urge to bite the brown loaf of my arm. The marks on my flesh faded by sundown. The sweetest meat clings, she insists, peels a mango. Amber rivers trace her elbows. A trail of L'air du Temps wafts in her wake. I follow it to her room, dab the scent on my wrists and throat. Evenings, she sang kundimans, Hating Gabi, Nasaan Ka Irog, Carmen, Song of the Mangosteen Moon. Before you go, I want to give you something. She hands me a thimble painted with a map of Cuba. We've never been to Cuba. In the dream, a sister pours rosary beads into her cupped hands. Upon waking, a dead wasp curled in her palm. So this next poem is written in the golden shovel form. It's a poetic form, as many of you know, developed by the contemporary poet Terence Hayes, who used a line of poetry by the great Gwendolyn Brooks, who was mentioned earlier in the last reading. So he wrote this in tribute to her. And each word of that borrowed line appears at the end of each line. So in my poem, I borrowed a line from the popular Yeats poem, The Circus Animal's Desertion, and the line is the foul rag and bone shop of the heart. So if you read down this way, you'll see those words, the foul rag and bone shop of the heart. It's a poem on mothering, early motherhood, and there's several poems about mothering throughout life stages in this book. And I want to dedicate it to the late great poet and educator Leslie McGrath, who we lost last year. I met her just a year before when she chose this poem for the Yeats Prize. And we developed a friendship just online, writing each other notes after she had announced the prize. And I learned so much from her and was just so grateful to be, to feel her generosity and warmth. And I saved all her messages. And I just want to share a small thing that she said. She said, because I had told her my poems are small and about domestic life and family. And I just really appreciate that you picked it, because I feel, you know, these are not subjects that society always tends to care about, I mean, in poetry. And she said, no, not small at all, because these are the most universal subjects. And she said in this letter, I'm hoping that as more women poets move into positions of influence, like being judges or editors, that these themes will garner the respect they always deserved. She always said there's so many ways of being a poet. It's not just about prizes or fame, but she said, and I quote, it's about being vulnerable, porous enough to be influenced by those we admire, then eventually modeling the same generosity and goodness for others. Just so beautiful. And I'm just so lucky to have met her that year. So this is the foul rag and bone shop of the heart, a golden shovel using a line from William Butler Yeats. I'm not just talking about the sleepless days and nights, the nonstop nursing, the foul-smelling diapers. I'm talking about how my body reeked, a soaked rag of curdled milk, drool, and leaky nappies, and how I'd wake already beat beyond blood, bone, and breath, the babe still at my breast. But when I pushed past a shop window the other day, I turned to do a double take. A glimmer of a woman I once knew. No, it wasn't just the wind-tossed hair, the morning-weary face, but oh, the heart, the heart. There are many ways to write about loss, and the next poem uses the Apophatic Method, a term that simply means using negation to describe something that cannot be stated in positive terms. And this is derived from theology, from the Christian tradition, where it refers to knowledge of God by talking about what God is not. And I just want to mention that I learned this term first in Reginald Gibbons' class at Warren Wilson when I was an MFA student there, and it made a huge impression on me. And little did I know back then that it would be so useful after, I experienced these monumental losses and couldn't find the words to talk about them or even write about them. So this poem is called Via Negativa. The air in a room after a door closes. The grotto of quiet after the last clap. What occupies a glass when it's emptied? Two equal parts, the difference between. The void housed by a heart squeezed of longing. The period, the white after it. A name on the tip of my tongue. The earlobe after the earring is unhung. The no one at the end of a phone ringing. When a painting is removed, its cream shadow, unbleached by sun. It's really interesting that we started with translation, and then Rodney also translated, his beautiful stories into music by listing all those lovely sounding words. And I feel like in some ways, what I'm trying to do in my poems is to translate grief, because it almost feels like grief is another country that we inhabit. So I think I'll end with the last poem in the book. Well, it's not the last poem, but it's the title poem of this book, What Happens Is Neither. And when I wrote this poem, my mom was already well into her Alzheimer's, and my dad's favorite my dad's way of communicating with her became through his violin, which you'll see back here. That's my dad's violin, which I hold very dear, and that's his Beethoven bust that he would carry around with him wherever he moved. So yeah, it's a reminder that that music and art, poetry, dance, whatever it is we do, outlasts language. What happens is neither. What happens is neither the end nor the beginning. Yet we're wired to look for signs. Consider the peonies. One makes a perfect bud after months of nothing. Another's leaves are ringed with black rot. How can I not think end? How can I not say beginning? Leaves fall when days shorten because the tree must reduce to its tough parts, twig, branch, bark. My mother sleeps away the daylight. She nods off while chewing a spoonful of fish and rice, her head a peony gone to seed. Father calls to say she doesn't recognize him. Turning to him, she cried out, certain a stranger was in her bed. He played his violin till she slept, a leaf in late fall curling into itself. In autumn, chlorophyll disappears, canceling green from leaves as so yellow and magenta can blaze. In my mirror, I see her, the smile that favors a cheek, eyes slanting in the shape of small fish we eat for breakfast. Trees know best the now of things. What goes on has been going on for centuries. Washing dishes, I rest a foot on my standing leg. A fork clangs on the tile. I rinse a cracked cup. I try not to think of endings. Thank you.
Whew. Sorry, I went like this many times throughout that reading. That was wonderful and lovely, and such a tribute. And what a treasure, the violin that you have back there. What a lovely keepsake. Keepsake isn't even quite the right word. It's, yeah, just a treasure. So,
Thank you.
all right. So our next poet tonight, our fourth and final poet for the reading tonight is Abigail Wender. Abigail Wender's poems and translations have been published in Bodega, the Cortland Review, Epiphany, Guernica, Kenyon Review Online, Tupelo Quarterly, and numerous other journals and anthologies. She is currently completing a translation of Iris Haneke's award-winning contemporary German novel, The Bureau of Past Management, which will be out this fall. And her latest project is a series of poems about the body to accompany artist Anita Glesta's Heart series, which is an installation of sculpture, video, and painting. She's the president of the Friends of Writers, vice president of the Board of Governors of the Poetry Society of America, and a trustee emerita of the Kenyon Review. She holds an MFA from the Program for Writers at Warren Wilson College and lives in Massachusetts. Reliquary is her first collection of poems. Welcome, Abigail.
Thank you. Thank you to the Poetry Center and to Left Bank Books and to my fellow poets. This is a wonderful evening, and those were beautiful poems. Rodney, Reg, and Angela, I'm very moved. So I'm going to start with a poem called The Dark Sky. It is about, to some extent, it's about the bombing of the World Trade Center. The Dark Sky. The explosions we heard that day are silent in outer space. The sky has no memory of numbers, nor of phone numbers, dog tags, zip codes, not the dimmest memory. With no end to the stars, it's impossible to compare the universe to ourselves. So let's avoid comparisons altogether, the way a physician avoids a final diagnosis. Ancient Egyptians believed the heart stored memory. They mummified it too inside the body, then buried everything along with cat, dice, spinning tops, pastimes, and memory bundled together in hemp. This pallet you and I lie on is made of longing, how we love to yearn. And what's love hurrying us to, a house of clouds? I guess we evaporate. We fear it. It's the knife we dare not touch, the knife that pierces fog, though I can't say why. The core of this book is, the core of this book is a story about one of my brothers who was addicted, you'll see, to opiates for many, many years. And I'll read a few poems from that core story. I agree with Angela that grief is another country that we inhabit, and maybe we carry that with us wherever we go. This longer poem is called Auguries, and I'll read some of it. Oh, my brother, no more your orphan mouth. Why can't I kneel and pray? I let myself out the window, take the fire escape. The days hang, the days pant. He vanishes like water through my fingers, but he wasn't made of water or light, though he seemed lucent, tender after the evening bath. The child who wrapped a towel turban style on his head joked, I'm delightful to be with. He was right about the war, and I was a pedantic twerp. He ate mayonnaise sandwiches, played trumpet, then flute, disappeared into the dog's luxuriant fur, whip and speed of ocean surf, devoured our mother's ice cream wafer cake, licking the whisk she'd hand him. The poet Horace told his friend not to weep, It's all superfluous. I won't be there. This is a reliquary to hold my brother's gifts, his sad kindness. What to say to those who remember him? I wait to hear him praised. What led him to that outermost gate? Our absent father? Our violent eldest brother? One blames the mother. At least that's what ours thought. Don't wear that. No one will ever love you. You look like trash. Mother, who brought the grown child home, stayed awake with him strung out, shallow-breathed, who stored his methadone on her refrigerator shelf. Sing Sing. Why? Why? She wants me to stay overnight in a prison trailer. The three of us, mother, son, daughter. They let you do that, the family together. I refuse. We stand in the visitor's line, our 2 brown bags filled with fruit, salami, cartons of cigarettes, snow drifts into our shoes. Prison construction exceeds all other industry. One of the years he's inside is declared New York State's Year of the Prison. After image. My mother dies, and I ignore the bulbs as they sprout in cold storage. Anemic white stalks. Later, given dirt and light and amaryllis chorus. Crimson ladies, red trumpet throats dissolving to black. This poem actually Reg helped me with at the Palm Beach conference. Was that that must have been, was it last year? I don't know. Hiking. I try to understand why countless unnamed pollutants poison our air, how millions of dollars were spent marketing opiates. Get in the swing with OxyContin. The mountain path ends in rock. Hiking, I break my walking stick. It's replaceable. There's a silence that's like unspoken complaints, 2 minds not making amends. At the meadow's edge, a scarlet tanager alights on a white pine. Are there words for us, America, high on an uppermost branch? This poem takes place in a whole other place entirely. It's called Post-Colonial. A Dutch cabinet opens, rush of mildew. It's the sea, he says, hair plump as a watered bush. He paces the house he was born in as if a part of him, unsuited for an emigrant's life, had remained stored with the batik shirts in the sandalwood Elmira. Tying his orange and black sarong around his waist, he surveys the garden, returns to the veranda. This man, the son of the son of the son, etc., and Asari halves my strive. Aunties and uncles wish us happy homecoming, bring tea packets and ashtrays hammered into a teardrop shape. Love from Ceylon. I tell them we don't smoke. They shake their heads no, meaning yes. 3 a.m. jet lag. He's reading his father's old letters in the near dark office. On the desk, there's a typewriter, no fingerprints on its keys. And from a black and white photo, one arm waving, his father appears to be calling. A son could do so much for his country. Yes, I say, meaning no. Just a few short ones. Brother again. I knew the time was coming when he'd be free, one of the many rising over the tree line, over yards, waving down at Mrs. McCarthy, the crossing guard. Below us, halting cars on Old Army Road and gliding in the soundlessness above street and traffic, steering toward his castle, even now. Mother, I feel her bubble up from sidewalk pavement, she who causes tremors, causes unfolding. Forsythia, black hellebore, rude crocus, then a breeze flits, a daub, a caress, a wink. And I'll end with this short poem. Is there certainty of it? If so, I'll be the mother of the waiting room, where every no will rejoin its yes. Every breast hold the child it once fed. I'll be the tyrant of bandages, keeper of salves. Every knife shall remember the wound, and the tattoo relinquish its prisoner's skin. I'll be paste and tape. I'll be the oak's merciful shade. I'll be the gate to its comings and goings, the quick hush of it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to add everyone back to the stream. Tonight was such a cacophony of emotion. So thank you all for doing this reading. That was beautiful. Audience, if you have any questions, now would be the time. We do have maybe just a couple moments for some quick questions. Any comments about tonight's reading? If you have any particular emotion that you felt kind of ran through for you, but I am just so incredibly happy that we were able to join you all four together this evening. It seemed to work together in ways that were just almost magical.
You know, it's funny. There's many of you are translators or work in translation. I would even venture to say, to some degree, all four of you, as I've read different of your works. But translation, other than it right at the beginning, it was not overt in a lot of these. There were a lot of lists and a lot of reference to memory. And I guess it makes me kind of wonder, I saw a lot and wonder if you could speak to the role of memory in your work, even in translation, because I know, Reg, that I think a lot of the poems in rendition are, pay homage in some ways to folks that have inspired you or that you've been moved by. So I'm just wondering wondering about memory and its role in your work.
I don't know if I can say very much about it, but every poem that attracts me, that I can manage to work out in another language, and that I actually use, is a poem that speaks to me in a way that I hadn't found an English language poem spoke. So it wakes me up to some feeling or memory I have that I realize I can say if I lean on the great dead.
That's a beautiful way of putting it, the great dead.
Yes.
My question for each of you, and if anyone has a response that they would like to share, but felt myself welling up with emotion a lot while you were reading. And I'm wondering if either during the writing of the poem and the revising, or like one of the readings, have you ever found yourself to be kind of shocked by your emotional response to the words? Maybe in a way that when you first wrote them, you didn't think would cause an emotional response to you, but then as you were working on it, it did.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sure. Yeah. Yeah, and I have a witness from the other night, Angela. You know, I had written. This is my debut collection, so I'm more interested in this book now as a reader of the work, more so than a writer. And I was reading a poem the other night about, a commemorative 9/11 concert, where Leontyne Price came out of retirement and Yo-Yo Ma was there. So it was, and, I thought I just read the poem, one would think, but the journey, it took me on another, I just went some other place in the occupying of it. It occupied me differently than I ever experienced, as a reader in particular. Yeah.
I felt that in your reading. It was very moving. I feel like when we read the words aloud, it occupies the room and our insides in a different way.
Yes.
To hear ourselves reading it. It's
Right.
just like naming it, naming the grief, naming the loss.
Yes.
Yeah. But in the process of writing, for me, I've been moved to tears sometimes because I never really know where the poem is going until I've finished it. Some poets say, I know the ending already when I get into this poem. I never know the ending. And a memory or an image from the past will crop up and I'll just write to it. And then in the end, it'll be like, oh, that's why this meant so much, or that's why it keeps recurring. I think it was Frost who said a poem must ride, it's like an ice cube on a hot stove. It must ride on its own melting. And that's what I hope I can keep doing. Just go with, trust the images and write to them and see what they yield.
Mm-hmm.
And often that's surprising. It's not where you thought it would end up.
That's the best when it surprises.
I think that was one of the first things that I learned when I was a student at Warren Wilson. And I think one of the things that stuck very early in my mind that Ellen Bryant Voigt said to me was, because I was saying something like, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where I'm going. Because I'm sort of, I want to know everything that's going to happen. And she said, no, if you knew where you were going, it would be very boring. You would never want to be writing it. And that seemed like such a simple thing, but such a profound and important little fact for me to learn that helped me a lot as I, continued to write.
Mm-hmm.
Just was key.
Rodney, I have the impression from the images, your rich imagery, that you write a lot from memory.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, probably some form of it. It could be reimagined,
Yeah.
But yes, for sure. I talk a lot about memory. Yes, it's true. Yeah.
We are just about out of time, unfortunately, because I feel like I could live in this conversation for a long time. I do want to share just one comment from the audience. Emily says, such a beautiful reading, 4 different styles, and yet related explorations of loss and survival. Thank you. So a lot of people commenting throughout the entire evening about various lines and things that really meant a lot to them. So I want to thank you for providing us with this incredible evening of poetry. I want to thank the St. Louis Poetry Center, the Four-Way Books, and each of you readers and the audience as well for being here, for making this such a beautiful evening of poetry for me.
Thank you, Shane, and thank you for keeping us safe and creating this wonderful space for us tonight. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Erin, for being such a gracious introducer.
Our pleasure. We are very grateful to be involved. So
Yes.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
And a last reminder, each of these books are available for sale at left-bank.com. I have provided a link for each individual book, but also for the 4 books collected at the very end can be found on our event page for this for tonight's event. So you can think about these as beautiful gifts for your friends, as beautiful gifts for yourself. And thank you all so much for joining us. We have a lot of really incredible poetry events coming up. So if you are a poetry lover, be sure to sign up for our newsletter. Thank you.
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you
Thanks
so
very
much.
much. Thank you, poets.
Thank
Thank you.
Great to see you all again.
you too.